Let me cut to the chase. Do you want to live the most perfect life that you can live? Do you want to live the life that God has especially designed for you? The one that will bring you the greatest pleasure, the one that will give others the greatest pleasure, the one that will cause others to see how great your God is. Does that thought excite you? Does that thought inspire you? Because look at the end of verse 2, that it seems to me is what is on offer. Then, end of verse 2, you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing and perfect will. God's good, pleasing and perfect will for your life. Wow, I want to say. We've jumped into chapter 12 of Paul's letter to Christians living in the city of Rome. Romans 1 to 11, Paul has been showing his readers Jesus. He's been saying, you know Jesus, the Jesus who loves you, the Jesus who died for you, the Jesus who says, follow me, stop not following me. I will forgive your past, I will transform your present, I will guarantee your future. Have you said yes to Jesus? Are you saying yes to Jesus? But here's the question from chapter 12 onwards. If you are saying yes to Jesus, how does that translate into your Sundays and your Mondays and your Tuesdays? Paul writes, chapter 12, verse 1, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing and perfect will. Paul wants me to realize that when I'm captivated by Jesus, I will stop conforming to the thinking of the surrounding world, and I will start to allow my mind to be transformed by Jesus and live wholeheartedly for Jesus. Because Jesus has in mind for me not only a perfect eternity, but a tailor-made best rest of my life in the time that I have left. But what does that look like for you? Well, Paul is about to say over the coming paragraphs, which we're going to look like over the coming weeks, what that looks like for you. So this morning, verses 3 to 8, I've entitled God's Perfect Plan for Me in His Church. And Paul writes, verse 3, for by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourselves more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. I will choose to, my first heading, because I am a recipient of grace. What does grace mean? It's one of those words that we use a lot, but what does it mean? Grace is God's astonishing attitude towards me. His mercy, his kindness, his willingness to choose me, treasure me, send his son to die for me. Verse 2, for the grace given me, says Paul. Verse 6, we have different gifts according to the grace given me. The gift of belonging, being adopted, having access. The gift as being as loved by the Father as his Son Jesus is. That's grace. And I am the recipient. John Newton's famous hymn, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Firstly, because I am a recipient of grace. Secondly, because God has gifted me. What has God gifted you? Verse 6, we have different gifts according to the grace being given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, verse 7, if it is serving, if it is teaching, verse 8, if it is to encourage, if it is giving, if it is to lead, if it is to show mercy. The Bible has a number of lists just like this. I say just like this. No, they're not just like this. They're all slightly different. Of course they're slightly different. Because we are all slightly different. Today, you are you. You are unique. There is no one today on this planet quite like you. No one else has your precise combination of backgrounds, of life experience, of practical skills, of ways to express yourself. No one else anywhere will react to any situation, to any person, in quite the same way that you do. Amazingly, God has given you, God has gifted you through the days of your life that he has so far ordained for you, through the difficulties that he has brought you, through the dark valleys, through your education, through your encounters with God. He's given every single one of you a unique personhood. Some of you are able to prophesy, to speak godly wisdom, to speak God's words into situations. Some of you have specific opportunities to serve, to be generous, to be compassionate, to be merciful, to do admin tasks, to do leadership tasks, to do skilled tasks, to do background tasks. Now, this isn't an exclusive list here. This is a broad list of examples. God has gifted you experience and skills and personalities and your relationship with the Lord. And the thrust of these verses, God has gifted you these things. And so what do? Well, you just do it. The implication here is that if he gives you the ability to serve, he will also give you the opportunity to serve, and you are, my language not Paul's, you are just to grab those opportunities. How do I discover my gifts? Well, I think it's possible to tie ourselves in knots about this. And my advice is for us simply to ask, what needs can I see that I can meet? Where can I see that mercy is needed, money is needed, a word in season is needed? Where can I see a job that needs doing? Isn't that a good place to start? Because I am a recipient of grace, because God has gifted me. Thirdly, because God has put me with my group of Christians. Verse 4, for just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. Body language. No, not the way I smile at you or scowl at you, but rather the way the Bible keeps using the picture of the church being like a human body. Just as in our physical bodies, there are eyes and noses and mouths and ears, all different, all needed, all valuable. So we as God's people are all different, all needed, all valuable. I believe that in our consumer age, where we choose to go to Aldi or Tesco for our food, to M&S or to Matalan for our clothes, to Netflix or to Sky for our entertainment, I wonder whether we've just started to choose whether to come to this building or stay at home or go shopping on our Sunday mornings. Church is increasingly becoming a lifestyle choice, like shopping, an event I choose or don't choose to attend. And God's view of church is completely different. Church is not an event. God's church is not an event I choose to come to or not come to. No, God's church is it's a family. It's a body of people. It's His family, His body that His people belong to. Note my next word, inseparably. We are as in it together as a heart and a lung are in it together. We are as dependent, we are as needed, we are as valuable. Have you worked out? This church family cannot work properly without you. Without you. If I can put it like this, without you, we will limp. You're that valuable. You were given to us by God at this moment in history because He thinks we need you. He thinks you need us. He thinks you need your church family just as much as your lungs need your heart. Verse 5, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. Because I am a recipient of grace, because God has gifted me, because God has put me with my group of Christians. Chapter 12, verse 1, Paul, because of those things, Paul urges you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing and perfect will. And therefore he asks you to choose to serve your fellow Christians, to choose to serve your church. Verse 6, we have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. In other words, speak godly words that are consistent with your faith. Verse 7, if it's serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. Do you want to live the most perfect and pleasurable life that you can live? Well, because you are a recipient of grace, because God has gifted you, because God has put you in our group of Christians, you can choose to serve. But sometimes I don't feel like this. Sometimes my mind doesn't think like this. Sometimes my will doesn't act like this. Why is this? What is the solution to this? Well, we need to return to verses 1 and 2. We will return to verses 1 and 2 lots over the coming weeks. Verses 1 and 2, where Paul tells us to stop conforming to the thinking of the surrounding world and start to allow my mind to be transformed by Jesus and so live wholeheartedly for Jesus. Let's be under no illusion. This way of viewing and serving each other is deeply radical, deeply countercultural, deeply at odds with the message of the surrounding world we are bombarded with. The world around me really is saying, no, it is better to be served than to serve. Who wants to be a servant when you can take charge? No, it's better to receive than give. You need to look after number one. No, it is better to be comfortable than sacrificial. Who wants to be uncomfortable? No, it is better to sit back than commit. I don't want to commit because something better might come along. No, it is better to live for myself than to live for others. These are radical commands, aren't they? Serving when I want someone to look after me. Leading when I want somebody else to pick up the responsibility. Giving when I barely got enough for myself. Being merciful when I frankly got no mercy left in me. Not drawing attention to my service when no one else seems to have noticed. Even turning up on a Sunday morning when there are 101 other things to do. This is radical, isn't it? This is hard. Until I see Jesus, the one who supremely served. Until I see Jesus dying on a cross and taking on my weariness, my selfishness, my lukewarm service. And then I hear him saying to me, do you know, whether you serve me or not, I've made you mine. I'm going to serve you whether you appreciate the depth of my service for you or not. But then he does say to me that those who are his, I am working at changing your mind. I am working at renewing your mind. I am helping you to begin to think as you were made to think. I am intent on changing you so that your thinking is my thinking. Paul writes, verse 12, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, perfect and pleasing will. Shun the thinking of the world, says Paul. Allow your mind to be changed by Jesus. Live wholeheartedly for Jesus. For that's the good life. That's the pleasurable life. That's the perfect life. And because you are a recipient of grace, because God has gifted you, because God has put you in our group of Christians, you can choose to, well, look at that list in verse 7 and 8. What can you choose?